In the old car brigade, there are three types of car. There is the veteran, which is made anything up to 1905, an Edwardian car from 1905 to 1919, and a vintage car is from 1919 to 1930. Well, the fascination in all these cars lies in having something different from everybody else, also having a piece of motoring history, and having something that will run with 100% reliability, good engineering embodied with good coach building and comfortable seating. I think there's nothing to beat it. Of course, driving a veteran vehicle is so much different to driving a modern car. For instance, there is no accelerator whatsoever. Accelerators were a later innovation and usually fitted on the very late Edwardian cars and vintage cars. The Kildrummy Rally, which is the Brighton of the North, is really the best rally in Scotland without any shadow of doubt. It consists of a run of 35 miles, and each and every one of the veterans completes it without any trouble whatsoever. Most of these cars are sort of one-off. Everything was hand-built. Often enough parts were sent out to different manufacturers, and there may have been 4 or 5 different blacksmiths working on the chassis for the same model. The modern car may be much more easily kept than a vintage car. There is a lot of brass, aluminium, copper and such like to be kept clean and polished. It really keeps the car in tip-top condition. Bodywork, engineering, paintwork was all superior to the modern car, but of course it was an entirely different unit. Modern cars built for a matter of 18 months at the very most, and then to be thrown in the scrap heap. I always fancied the bullnose Morris Oxfords and bullnose Cowleys. They looked very antiquated even in my early years. Nearly every motorist's wish is to own or drive a Rolls-Royce, but the enthusiast's wish is really to own a pre-1913 Rolls-Royce. They have a high top gear called a sprinting gear, and this gives them a very good performance, a much more lively performance than the vintage models, which mostly nowadays carry heavier saloon type of bodywork. The early Rollses had the lovely brasswork and the gleaming varnished woodwork. I'd always hoped that I'd be able to buy a veteran or a vintage car, first getting a 1904 Minerva. I found the Humbrette in a garage in Edinburgh. I managed to buy it after about 3 or 4 years of enquiries and general chatting every time I was in Edinburgh. The first thing that I had to do was wash it. The dirt was at least half an inch thick. We finally cleaned it down, found the chassis number, which is the main thing to find, took as many photographs as we could. This is the most helpful thing to the historian of the Veteran Car Club, who officially dates any veteran vehicle found in this country. We later learned that she had been first registered in January 1904. She was actually the prototype of the 1904 Humbrette. The car wasn't in running order when I bought it. The trembler coil was missing, the carburetor was missing. I managed to find its original carburetor on another car. I've had to make up all the other parts, but I did manage to pick up a trembler coil. The fact that I'm known as a collector nowadays makes things a little bit harder, as people tend to get inflated ideas as to the value of the parts that they may have for sale, and everyone seems to think that whatever they have is worth 20 times its real value. And of course, at these prices, I just have to tell them that they're asking something ridiculous, and sometimes they're very hurt at this. When one is starting to restore a veteran car, The best idea is to get as many photographs as possible of each and every part, and then dismantle only one piece at a time. Renew everything that is requiring to be renewed, rebuild every worn part, and have that part finished. Then paint it. And if you go along the chassis in that way, you'll know at any time, if you ever have to stop, where to start again. This is the best method. It's not always practicable, as certain parts have to be sent away, be machined or built up, and it means bypassing that part for a short period until the parts come back and can be reassembled. Sometimes parts are missing, and it takes a little bit of time, research, hunting for photographs. It may take months sometimes to find what a part actually looked like, and then one has to get it made. Modifications are all noted at the time, and one can choose to leave the modifications if it is thought that these modifications were put on in the early days. We dismantled this car completely and decided to restore the car bit by bit, doing everything from the foundation, scraping and cleaning all the time. This is the most laborious part of the work, but it's very rewarding when one sees the paintwork at the end of the day. The steering column is not made of brass, as most of the veterans are, but nickel-plated. Nickel plating was frowned upon by the nobility, who had somebody else to clean their cars, and the nickel plating was thought to be the poor man's way of keeping his car looking cleaner, as it didn't need quite so much attention as brass. Tires generally are a bit of a problem, but the Dunlop Rubber Company have been very, very helpful, and they have gone out of their way to supply all the obsolete sizes possible. There are one or two sizes no longer obtainable, but 95% of veteran cars can have new tires fitted to them. These things are a great help, of course, but again, they can be very expensive. But I would never advise anyone owning a veteran or vintage car to run on second-rate tires. Always run new tires if possible, because after all, you're carrying a vehicle costing a lot of money, and one burst tire can mean the loss of that vehicle and all the work that has been put into it. Of course, a project such as I have here is not the work of myself alone. I have over the years collected around me a bunch of enthusiasts, and I will say real good craftsmen. In fact, every one of the workmen on this project is hand-picked. This is one place where unions and demarcation lines just do not exist, because anybody has to muck in and do any job that's required. One can often see the painter helping the panel beater or the leather trimmer. He may be scraping down, cleaning parts, doing anything at all. Everyone has to muck in at any time on any job. But the final testing is the day that everything has been rebuilt and is ready for the starting handle to be put in place. There is always a bit of skepticism on the parts of the people standing around. Will it or won't it start? But I have never the least worry when it comes to a veteran or vintage vehicle. A modern car I wouldn't trust for 1 minute, but I know that a veteran will always start, providing the things are in the right order, that the spark is there, the petrol is there, and the switch is on. 1 or 2 turns and it should start without any trouble. Come on, boys, there's an empty space in the workshop now, but not for long.